Welcome to Chapter 7 Ethical Decision Making, Technology, and Privacy in the Workplace. In today's interconnected society, technology is firmly ingrained in how we operate. Employers may now use software to monitor performance, follow communication, and even observe employee conduct. However, with this potential comes ethical duty. In this chapter, we will look at how businesses may strike a balance between managing people and protecting their business while also respecting their employees' privacy. Let's start with our objectives. By the conclusion of this chapter, you'll know how to define privacy and why it's so important in the workplace. We'll look at legal privacy safeguards, ethical underpinnings, and how monitoring such as email checks, drug tests, or social media evaluations presents fairness concerns. You'll also learn about global privacy legislation such as GDPR and how firms handle their workers' actions outside of work. Technology has dramatically reshaped the way businesses operate. It's essential, powerful, and often necessary. But it also brings significant ethical concerns, especially when it allows employers to access personal information, monitor behavior, or influence what employees do even outside of work. As work and life become more interconnected, understanding how to ethically manage privacy becomes not just helpful but essential for maintaining fairness and trust. Email is the electronic equivalent of DNA evidence. If your workplace gets embroiled in a lawsuit, you can take it to the bank that your email will be subpoenaed, according to Nancy Flynn. This quotation demonstrates the effectiveness and durability of email communication. Like DNA at a crime scene, emails may be crucial evidence in court cases. It's crucial to be considerate and professional in all of your communications because of this. Digital communication isn't always private in the office. In the course of audits or investigations, it is frequently tracked, preserved, and made available. That awareness is a first step towards using technology ethically. There are two ways to think about privacy. First, as the freedom to be left alone, that is unhindered by prying eyes. The second is the right to regulate personal information, which is more important in today's business. The second definition is particularly crucial in a digital workplace because while workers may not anticipate total privacy, they do anticipate control over the use of their personal information. Privacy is about liberty, respect, and trust, not just about keeping information hidden. Employees are more likely to be interested, devoted, and productive at work when they believe their privacy is respected. However, monitoring can cause tension, animosity, or even legal issues if it feels intrusive. Because of this, privacy needs to be viewed as a fundamental principle rather than merely a matter of compliance. The ethical foundation of privacy is the idea of autonomy, or our freedom to make our own life decisions. This is a component of a shared duty at work. While businesses must respect their workers' privacy and dignity, employees are required to respect their employer's objectives and assets. We refer to this two-way interaction as reciprocal duty.
Hypernorms and moral free space. We frequently discuss hypernorms in ethics, which are universal standards that cut beyond cultural boundaries. Most people agree that privacy is one of these, even while some ethical standards differ by area or business. What we refer to as moral free space, the ability to manage personal data, is universally seen as necessary for a productive and civil workplace. The perspective of property is another way to see privacy. Personal information has ownership and worth. Just as tangible items, important problems are brought up by this viewpoint. Who has ownership over the data created at work? The employer or the employee? What are an individual's rights regarding their online persona? These are important issues in contemporary workplace ethics. Legal privacy protection comes from the three main sources: the U.S. common law, state and federal laws, and the Constitution. For example, the Fourth Amendment prohibits unjustified searches, yet it primarily covers public employers. Protection in the private sector are less precise and differ by jurisdiction, which allows for ethical interpretation. Unauthorized access to stored communication is forbidden by the Electronic Communication Privacy Act of 1986 or ECPA. However, it mostly restricts access to the business's system by other parties, not the employer itself. Employee expectations of privacy are thus complicated by the fact that employers frequently have the legal authority to monitor emails or texts sent over corporate networks. Courts typically ask, did the employee have a reasonable expectation of privacy? Employees are often seen as having had sufficient warning if a corporation has a written policy and explicitly states the conversation may be monitored. An employee's perception of their privacy may be overridden by a lack of formal protections. Some states have taken further steps to safeguard the privacy of their employees. Delaware and Connecticut, for instance, mandate that businesses alert employees when they are being watched. As of 2019, businesses are not allowed to request social media password from workers in 26 states and Guam. However, because these rules vary, managers and staff alike need to be aware of local legislation.
A new international norm for data privacy has been established by the GDPR of the European Union. It gives consumers the right to view or update their information, ensures openness about data usage, and requires explicit informed consent before collecting personal data. Businesses who break these regulations risk severe penalties, even if they are based outside the EU but provide services to the EU clients. Many US organizations use the Privacy Shield framework in order to comply with the GDPR. It mandates that they restrict the sharing of personal data, answer complaints within 45 days, and self-certify that companies adhere to the EU privacy norms. This method is still a growing field of law, nevertheless, because it has been criticized and challenged in court. Not all circumstances are covered by legal safeguards. Ethics enters the picture here. Ethical considerations should be taken into consideration when a business gathers or utilizes personal information in ways that are against the law but yes, seem intrusive. Employers must make sure their data practices respect human dignity and that consent is more than simply a checkbox. From GPS position and biometric information to emails and internet activity, new technology makes it simpler to keep an eye on workers in real time. Although this might increase efficiency or safety, it can also feel invasive, particularly if staff members aren't told. Employers who uphold ethical standards must balance the advantages of monitoring against a possible risk to confidence and privacy. Take Google's example of searching Gmail conversations for relevant ads. Many believe that the technique was immoral, despite the fact that it was technically permitted by its user agreement. This response demonstrates that when making decisions about data, firms must take stakeholder expectations and public trust into account. Legality alone isn't always sufficient. Ethical use of information relies on several principles: honesty in communication, respect for personal privacy, protection of systems and networks, and accountability for actions. As data becomes more powerful, so does the responsibility to use it carefully. Both employers and employees have a role in maintaining ethical information practices. Employers monitor workers to manage productivity, improve efficiency, ensure legal compliance, and protect company resources. These are valid reasons, but monitoring should be conducted transparently. With clear policies and a focus on relevant job-related information, overreach can easily damage morale and invite legal trouble.
Common monitoring tools include scanning, internet filters, surveillance, cameras, and wearable tech like badges that track voice, tone, or movement. These tools offer insights but can also infringe on personal space. Employers must be mindful not just of what they can track, but whether they should. Tech knowledge gaps. Another concern in this gap is understanding Many employees don't fully realize how they're being monitored or what data is being collected. This lack of awareness puts them at a disadvantage. Ethically, companies should educate their staff and ensure everyone understands the scope and purpose of monitoring tools. Always connected with smartphones and remote work, employees are often expected to be reachable around the clock, but this always on culture can lead to burnout and blur the lines between personal and professional life. Ethical decision making includes setting boundaries so employees can disconnect and recharge. Consequences of misuse. Surveillance isn't just theoretical, it has real world consequences. Employers have fired people for excessive internet use, inappropriate emails, or problematic social media posts. That's why clear, fair, and well communicated policies are essential. Employees need to know the rules and employers need to enforce them consistently. Ethics of drug testing. Drug testing is another form of monitoring. Employers may argue it's necessary for safety or liability reasons. However, employees might feel their personal habits outside work are nobody's business, especially if those habits don't affect their performance. As marijuana becomes legal in more states, these issues become even more complicated. Drug testing challenges. Courts have started to recognize that a positive drug test doesn't always prove impairment, especially with some tests like cannabis. Presence in the system doesn't mean someone is unfit to work. Employers must navigate these issues carefully and ethically, balancing safety with fairness and avoiding discrimination.
Other forms of surveillance. Employers also use polygraphs, medical exams, and genetic screening in some cases. While laws like HIPAA and the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act provide protections, gray areas remain. As technology evolves, so too must our understanding of what information is appropriate to collect and how it should be handled. Genetic Information Rules. Under GINA, employers generally can't use genetic information in hiring or employment decisions. Exceptions exist, like monitoring exposure to workplace toxins or following family medical leave rules. But even then, privacy must be carefully protected. Misuse of this kind of sensitive data carries serious ethical and legal consequences. Cost of over-monitoring. Excessive monitoring can backfire. It can increase stress, reduce creativity, and create a workplace culture based on suspicion. It may even lead to physical health issues like eye strain or repetitive stress injuries. Ethical leaders must ask, does this kind of monitoring really help, or does it hurt more than it helps? Ethical monitoring policies. Good monitoring policies are transparent, limited in scope, and respectful of personal space. They avoid private areas like restrooms, limit data collection to business-related activities, and give employees access to information collected about them. Most importantly, ethical policies are shared in advance. Nothing should come as a surprise. The right to be let alone is indeed the beginning of all freedom. The phrase serves as a reminder that personal freedom is based on privacy. Respecting privacy at work entails seeing staff members as distinct individuals rather than employees. It's about establishing dignity and trust. Other liberties rapidly start to erode when people aren't allowed to think and act freely. Because of this, the value of privacy must constantly be taken into account while making ethical decisions. William Perrin 6 questions. To evaluate whether an action violates privacy, philosopher William proposed 6 guiding questions. Why is the information being collected? Is the reason legitimate? Is the data relevant? Is this the least invasive method? Are safeguards in place? And how will the information be protected? These questions help ensure that even necessary monitoring is done with fairness, transparency, and ethical accountability. It is more crucial than ever to strike a balance between technology and privacy in today's digital workplace. Employers may need to keep an eye on employee performance or safeguard assets, but they must do so ethically, respecting the autonomy of workers. Privacy is a human concern as well as a legal one. Fairness, openness, and clear communication are essential. Making moral decisions fosters a more courteous and effective workplace in addition to compliance. Because in every decision about data, we're really making a decision about people.